Hi, I'm Bill Hodges, and this is Spotlight on Government. We have with us Craig Latimer, who's the Hillsborough Supervisor of Elections. Brand new Supervisor of Elections, I guess I should say.
Yes, brand new, just elected in the last general election and assumed office January 8th of this year.
Although not new to the office.
No.
You've been there quite a while.
I have. I've been there for 4 years. I came in 2009 with Phyllis Bazansky after she won the office. She asked me to come be her chief of staff at the office, and I graciously accepted that job.
I was so pleased that Phyllis gave me the opportunity to sit down and interview her. And that was the only interview that she gave because of the buddy thing and everything. Everybody wanted to get into that. And I said, no, I want to talk about you.
There you go.
And as it turned out, after her heart attack, it was something I could give to her family that was really a retrospective on her.
That's nice.
It was really kind of nice to have. And you've been working for Earl Leonard for the last couple of years, another man who I respect more than most that I've ever met.
Well, Earl's obviously an icon in this community. I mean, he's spent 40 years in the school district, starting off as a classroom teacher, worked his way up and assumed leadership of the school district, which at the time I think was like the 10th largest school district in the nation. Just a big process. And I had the good fortune that I had actually worked with Earl previously. So he knew what he was getting, and I knew what I was getting when he came on into the office.
So how many elective offices have you ran for?
This is the very first office I've ever run for.
You ran for one, won one?
That's it.
You're batting 1,000.
That's it.
Of course, I'm not a big baseball fan. I never figured out how that could be 1,000. 100 would seem to me be reasonable. But why would you do that to yourself? You've seen what politicians have to go through.
Yeah, well, in 2009 when I came on with Phyllis, there was a lot of problems in that office. And
that's an understatement.
We put together a team that really turned around the election process in Hillsborough County here. I felt that the citizens of this county really deserved to be able to have confidence back in the election system from the Pam Iorio days and the Robin Kravanik days. And that's what we set out to do, and we did. I think that the proof is there. This latest election, the 2012 general election, we had put together a great team. We were really turning it around for that office, and I just felt a commitment of all the work that we'd put into it that we needed to continue, that people would know that stability and confidence was there. This
is not your first foray into public service, though. You've got a long career of public service, as I understand. Isn't that not correct?
I have. I've spent my entire life in public service. As a matter of fact, I, right out of high school, went to work for the Tampa Police Department as a crime scene technician trainee. So I was a CSI before it was cool, and then went on to the sheriff's office and spent the next 35 years at the sheriff's office. Spent most of my career in the homicide and major crimes area. I was a homicide detective, homicide sergeant, homicide lieutenant, and homicide captain.
Really?
My last assignment, I was promoted to major, and I transitioned the child protective investigations from the state of Florida Department of Children and Families to the sheriff's office.
What were those now?
The child protective investigators. This is anytime somebody calls a 1-800-ABUSE call to Tallahassee hotline.
Okay.
It comes back to whatever the county is.
All right.
At the time, there was 5 sheriff's offices that had assumed those duties. And Hillsborough County was the 6th sheriff's office that took that over from the state. And that consisted of then having to put together what is still today one of the largest divisions in the sheriff's office with 100 civilian investigators, civilian supervisors, and just a handful of sworn personnel that investigate anywhere from 11,000 to 13,000 allegations of child abuse every year.
Wow, I had no idea. David G. is a great sheriff, and I really liked the one before him, too. I thought he was a really wonderful guy.
I worked for 4 of them, and they were all great.
Did you really?
Malcolm Beard, Walter Heinrich, Cal Henderson, and David G.
Cal was quite a character. I really enjoyed having him on the show. What do you see as the major challenges in your office today? We can go back right now, and we can look at the past election. And all over the state of Florida, there were problems. There were people couldn't get ballots. There were people who couldn't find places to vote. There were problems with people voting too many times. just about every problem you could imagine, but they weren't here. Yeah. What did you do and your office do differently that set such a gold standard, if you will, for running an election?
Well, we knew going into the election, first off, that we were going to have a 3-page ballot, 17 inches long, 2 sides.
Oh, it's a monster.
Yep. There was, I think 10 or 11 constitutional amendments on it.
None of which were very clear, even though the Supreme Court says they were.
Well, and you know, Bill, if you or I wanted to put an amendment on the ballot, we would be limited to 75 words. The legislature's not limited.
So there
was one amendment that was over 900 words that was thrown off the ballot.
Wow.
So yes, we knew it was going to be a long ballot, and of course, because Hillsborough County is under the Department of Justice jurisdiction for preclearance, we're required to print our ballot in both English and Spanish, and so that added to the length of it too.
Explain that, you know, well, we can go on, but I want you to be sure not to miss coming back and explaining that preclearance. But go ahead with your story, and then we'll drop back to that.
So we knew, as I said, that we were going to be faced with a long ballot, and that it was going to, if people came in to vote, it was going to be a lengthy process. So we set out to really get as many people as we could to vote by mail and to vote at early vote sites. In Hillsborough County here, we had 15 early vote sites, which equates to 1 early vote site for about every 50,000 voters. The end result of the marketing that we did is 62% of our voters voted prior to Election Day.
Boy, that took a real, the pig had already been swallowed by the python.
Absolutely. That left us 38% of our voters who were going to vote that voted on Election Day at that point, which was very manageable for us. It resulted in not having lines. It resulted in smooth operations at over our 300 polling sites that we have on Election Day.
It seems to me what you're saying is just common sense. But I guess if common sense were common, there'd be a lot more of it.
Agreed.
But what happened across the state?
Well, I really can't.
I mean, these other election superintendents had to have something on the ball to get elected.
I really can't answer what happened in some of the other jurisdictions. I do know that some jurisdictions for the first time faced multi-page ballots just with the amendments. You know, they only print in English, but it was the first time that they had had more than 1 page.
Oh, okay.
And that brings on some challenges with balancing and making sure that you know, you're balancing your
some
voters.
Some of the smaller counties?
To well, some larger size counties too. So that, I know that was one of the challenges that I heard from some of the different offices around the state.
Let's go back to the federal controls. One thing I do not understand, in order to be a citizen of the United States, you have to pass a test. That test requires you to be able to speak English. Why are we having to write ballots in different languages?
Well, if you're the children of that person that had to become a citizen, it's not required that you have to know how to speak English. So you may in fact be Spanish and never have learned English, but you're a citizen of the United States still. And this goes back to the early 70s, actually, where there was a standard that was set by the Department of Justice, and it had to do with how much of your population voted in a presidential election and how much of your population was other than English speaking. And that was what set the benchmark, and it just so happened that year we had a low turnout, and as you know, Hillsborough County and the city of Tampa has a rich Hispanic background in history, and we've always had a tremendous amount of Spanish speakers in this community. And that's when we fell under the Department of Justice preclearance. Now, it's not as awful as it sounds. You know, everything we do is in English and Spanish. I will tell you that some counties do English, Spanish, Creole, and other languages too.
I was going to ask you, if I was Lithuanian, would you have to give me a
Well,
ballot
it depends on what the
Lithuanian?
population is, how many of the Lithuanian speakers there are. You know, it has to be a great amount too. But basically, it's a checks and balance too. One of the things, every time we move a polling site, we have to get preclearance from the federal government on that.
Yeah. If you move from this church over to this church?
Correct. But you know what that does is it's a nice check in place to make sure that somebody's not moving this church from this side of the county over here to where people can't get to it and possibly taking a chance of suppressing votes in some way. And we've never had a problem with it at all. We actually, when we just went through redistricting, re-precincting after redistricting and reapportionment, we submitted a package and everything cleared fine and dandy. So, it's nothing but a little bit of checks and balance, I think, from my view. It certainly does not hamper what we do, and it gives us integrity to the process that we're doing to, once again, I think, show the voters that we're doing it right. We're doing it the right way.
Well, I have to admit that I thought this was all nonsense, but what you're explaining makes perfect sense to me. And if you can do it and do it so well, it doesn't seem to me to be a problem with the rest of the state.
There's only 5 counties in the state of Florida that are actually under the pre-clearance currently.
Dade and
it's Hillsborough, Dade, Collier, Highlands, and but they're spread out.
It's not a test. You're not going to be graded.
From the central to the south part of the state is where they are.
It actually is working very well to have. Will we always be under this, or is there?
Well, there's actually cases right now that could possibly take us out of that pre-clearance. It comes up again for review. It actually comes up every few years for review to see if they need to continue it or not. So we'll see what the courts do. But I can assure you, from my viewpoint, it does not hamper how we do business at all, and I think it puts in an extra layer of protection of how we do business.
Does minority voting districts and that all play into this too?
Well, that was what originally said it was a minority Spanish language. So that's the only pre-clearance that we're under.
Let's go to voting machines.
Sure.
As I understand it, the supervisor of elections has the choice of voting machines, that the state does not all have the same unit across the state. Is that correct?
Yes and no.
All right.
The supervisor of election does make the choice which voting machine or voting system they want to go with. However, we can only choose from machines that have been certified by the Division of Elections in the state of Florida.
Okay.
So there is several different types of machines and vendors that are out there. Hillsborough County, we have some of the very latest equipment that's been produced. And it was a little bit of an arduous task to get where we are, but I can tell you that today I'm very confident with the equipment that we use.
Would there not be an argument made to have the same equipment across the entire state?
You could make that argument, but
As I move from Hillsborough down to Manatee or whatever, it would seem to me if everybody had the same piece of equipment, I wouldn't have a learning curve. And with somebody, a college-educated person, that may not be that big a learning curve, but someone who hasn't had the education, that could be a bigger problem, couldn't it?
You have to remember that all the voting machines in the whole state require optical scan, so there's got to be a ballot with a bubble filled in on it.
Oh,
so,
okay.
So that's not real different. The only difference is where it starts to be that there's some machines that you touch the screen and it fills in the ballot for you, but then you vote the ballot into a tabulator still. So yeah, I mean, there's always an argument that you could make both ways. It's a money issue too. I mean, these are big ticket items.
I would assume. How long do they stay into play? I mean,
well, again, it depends on that certification from the state. If the state requires additional things that this equipment should do, then it's up to the vendor to meet that requirement. So the vendor could make a decision, that's not really feasible for us to do that, so we'll get out of the Florida market. So you've got like any commodity out there, it's supply and demand, and who wants what. There's a lot of counties right now that are going to have to upgrade their equipment because it is starting to reach the end of their life. There's some counties that have memory cards that have batteries in them, which when I heard that, I was beside myself, quite frankly. Ours don't. I can't imagine having
yours are plug-in all?
It's just a standard memory card,
okay.
like an SD card almost.
Okay.
So adding batteries to it is just another avenue for failure, in my opinion. You've got something now, you've got to make sure that batteries are all good, and hopefully they'll stay good through the entire voting process.
Is there some duplication of the process You have the ballot. Now it runs through a machine. The ballots are kept, so if the machine was certified to have gone bad or something, you could go back to those specific ballots from that machine?
Absolutely, and that happens. That's one of the things that I think is a great plus for having the paper trail, the paper ballot. Because there is times, you've gone to your computer before and turned it on and probably got a blue screen that came up.
Not as often as I used to, but
so,
yes, you're absolutely right.
Those things happen. And you need to then go back and get those ballots and rescan them. And again, it goes back to balancing and auditing what you're doing. I mean, you've got a register in that polling site. You know how many people voted, so you know how many votes you're supposed to have. You don't know how they voted, but you know how many people voted.
Now, I will admit that because I travel a lot, I go ahead and get a lot of my ballots by mail. It just seems to me to be the most convenient and easiest way to do it, and it works for me. But tell us how this whole process starts. Back out from election day, and how do you get ready for it? How does it work through up till that last day when you're getting all the ballots in and you're letting the news media know what's going on?
Yeah. Vote by mail, I like a lot too. I'll tell you, I'm glad to hear that you've been very comfortable with it, because I think voting in the comfort of your own home is great. Gives you an opportunity if, all of a sudden there's a name of a candidate on there and you don't know a lot about them. If you've got internet access, you can research them. You can, you can put it down, you can come back to it several ways. So,
and my wife and I discuss it.
Yeah. I mean, and you can't do that in the polling site, by the way. We'll ask you to be quiet. Right. But the process is great, and it also allows us to be able to very well forecast how many personnel we need on hand to start the processing. And
these are volunteers for the most part you're dealing with, right? That you pay a certain small fee to?
We do pay. By law, we have to pay poll workers, by the way. But we bring on a cadre of temporary employees that under supervision would begin processing this. But let's back up a little bit, because there is a huge process involved in it. And go back to the Florida legislature. Back in 2009, they amended the law. The law used to be that if you made a request for a vote-by-mail ballot, it was good through 2 general elections. They changed the law in 2009 that it was only good through 1 general election. So after the 2010 general election, the entire state of Florida basically had their vote-by-mail rolls wiped off.
Ooh.
Then the legislature came back the next year and said, okay, you can go back to 2 years. So we had in 2008, there had been about 140,000 vote-by-mail ballots sent out. And so here we go from 140,000 in 2008 to now after the 2010 election, we literally had a couple hundred of requests on file. So that was one of the things I talked about before, that we really marketed it, we really pushed it to get people to vote by mail. So you sign up for a vote by mail ballot with our office. You can do it by email. You can do it right on our website, actually. You can go to votehillsboro.org and click the box right there, request your vote by mail ballot, and it holds it in a queue for us.
Okay.
Then what happens is, as we head towards the election, we begin to assimilate all those and get them ready. We use a vendor to actually print the vote by mail ballots and do the folding process. Then they come back to our office, where we then assemble them. We've got some pretty major machinery that puts all of the items into the envelope, and we also sort them to the 5-digit zip codes.
So the vendor doesn't send them out?
No,
you do.
We send them out right from our office. We deliver them to the post office. But by law, 45 days before an election is when the overseas military and overseas civilian ballots must be mailed. And then 30 to 35 days before the election is when the stateside or domestic, what we call domestic ballots, have to be mailed. And so
can they be mailed before that?
No.
Okay.
They cannot. And so but we continue to mail them too, because people will continue to call them, and we can do that up to 6 days before the election, which you can understand, to give time to mail and mail back. You've got to have that time there.
So if my mail-in doesn't get back by election day for one reason or another, does it get counted anywhere, or is it just dead?
It does not. If it does not get to our office by 7 p.m. on election day, it's a late ballot if it ever comes in.
Do you have some kind of arrangement with the Postal Department to make sure that everything that comes in that day, like IRS does, where sometimes they keep the postal department open till midnight.
We actually have people at the post office that night.
Picking them up, okay.
Yeah. And you can also, you can drop off your vote by mail office at any of our offices, and you can drop them off during early vote at any of the early vote sites.
Can you take them to any of the polling places?
No, you cannot take them to a polling site on election day. They have no vehicle there to be able to hold them and transport them.
Okay, all right.
But again, you can go on our website, www.votehillsboro.org, and you can track
That's
your
a
vote
great
by mail
Hills,
ballot.
that's a wonderful web. If you've not been to that website, you really need to go. It'll tell you who's running, where they're running from, how long they've been in office. There's all kind of great information. I use it continually.
Yeah, thank you. We've really revamped that, and we continue to try and put as much information out there as both voters and candidates and people that might want to be candidates can find on our website.
You talked about poll workers. Where do you find those? And if somebody wanted to be one, how would they do it and how are they compensated?
Well, they can contact our office for starters. Again, at our website, we have a whole area dedicated just to poll workers.
Okay.
A lot of them are word of mouth, but I will tell you that in 2009, I brought a program here that we replicated from someone else. They say imitation is the most sincerest form of flattery.
No use
And we
reinventing the wheel.
have a program that's called Adopt a Precinct. And what we do is we go out and encourage different clubs and organizations to get their people to volunteer and work for us on election day. We put them through the training, and instead of paying that individual directly, we write a check to the organization.
Oh, so it's a fundraiser.
It's a great way to raise funds. Plus, we feel we're getting a real qualified poll worker, because we're getting somebody that, you get somebody that belongs to the Civitan Club or the Sertoma Club. They've already got some buy-in to the community. They know what civic engagement is.
Sure.
And this is just another step for them.
Yeah.
And we find that they're excellent workers, and we've done a lot of our staffing with nonprofits. And I had one of them tell me that it was a lot better than trying to sell Cokes at a sporting event, that's for sure.
Well, I was a football referee for a lot of years, and I found the guys that didn't need the money were the best referees.
There you go.
The guys who were doing it for the money, it just wasn't the same.
Yeah.
Didn't get the same quality. So what you're saying is absolutely true.
Yeah, and we're hoping to really expand that program some more. So if there's any of the listeners that are out there that belong to clubs and organizations, not-for-profit organizations, please contact our office.
I would assume not political too?
Nonprofit organizations is what we want. If there's we try and stay away from.
So if it's a Democrat club or a Republican club, they could still do it?
We would probably split them up among many precincts instead of having them all at the same precinct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we get to election day. You've got these people trained. And by the way, how much training do they have to take, and are they paid for their training?
Yes, they are. It's a 4-hour training that they're required. Now we send the clerks through additional training. The clerk is the person that really runs that polling site. And again, we started this additional training back right before the 2010 election, and it's affectionately called the Bazansky Academy.
Oh.
And the reason for that is because that was one of Phyllis Bazansky's real visions.
How wonderful.
Was that she wanted to give the clerks the resources and tools to solve problems in the polling sites, so that they would be in charge and they'd take care of those problems in the polling site. And so we give additional training to these clerks in a lot of conflict resolution and how they can solve problems in the polling sites, and also to make sure that they're up on everything. And we provide them with a lot of the statutes, quick reference guides, everything they need.
And I assume there's places they can call to get additional information if they need it on a particular day.
Absolutely. And we have an online section they can go to refresh if they want to. And we actually have a computer in the polling site on election day that has the manuals for every single position in the polling site. So again, a quick reference that they can go to verify that that's the way it should be done, or say, oh, we need to do it this way.
It takes friends in order to get anywhere. And you've just gone through an election, and I always give, especially people who were just elected, a minute or two to talk to the people and thank them for their support, and reassure those people that didn't vote for you that you're still going to work for them. So would you like to take a minute and talk with the group?
Well, you know, the biggest thing is that this office needs to remain impartial, as we have. You know, it's kind of interesting. It's not a secret. Earl Leonard was a Republican. I was a Democrat, and we worked side by side in that office, and we have similar arrangements today. But this is an office that needs to be impartial and that people need to have confidence in, and confidence that their vote is counted and counted accurately. And that's what we're going to continue to do each and every day, is to continue to earn that confidence of the people and continue to show them that. I was very humbled by this election. I will tell you, this was my first ever attempt at running for any office. I did it because I felt it was the right thing to do, and that we had built this confidence up, and we didn't want to see it going anywhere except continued up. So I am very grateful for all of the voters in Hillsborough County, and we continue to hopefully make it the best place in America to vote.
And you had a fine opponent too, Glorioso. Mm-hmm. Representative Glorioso, retired full colonel from the Air Force. You're from the Sheriff's Department. Both of you held high rank. So it wasn't a walk away. You did a great job, and you're rewarded for it.
Like I said, I was very humbled by it and very grateful to the voters of Hillsborough County.
I'm really looking forward to having you back.
Be more than happy to.
There are so many more things that I think that the voters would like. A lot of the questions I ask, I told you in the beginning, I don't do a lot of research beforehand because I want to ask the questions my audience is going to ask, things they want to know. And after this program, I'll probably get a list of things from other people that they'll want to know from you also. One of the things that probably I'd like to see you do is come back just before the next major election. Maybe bring a voting machine back.
We can do that.
Run through a demonstration of how it works and why it works and what are the quirks of it. Think we could do that?
Be more than happy to do that.
I really appreciate your being here with me today, and I want to thank your staff for all the effort they did. But you're one of the few people that takes your own phone calls.
Thank you.
And I think that puts you a lot closer to the people, and I think that's a great thing too. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Bill Hodges. I've had Supervisor of Elections, Craig Latimer, on the show with us today. I'm sure you've learned a lot about the elections process. You're unique, you're special, you're great. Tell yourself so often because you are, We'll see you on the next Spotlight on Government. And Craig, thanks again for being with us.
Thank you.
Take some time to think, figure out what's important to you. Stop, take some time to think, figure out what's important to you. Gotta make a serious decision.